Okay, thanks for that, Mark. Lots to think about. I particularly like the insight into the Netflix and the YouTube mentality. I'm definitely going to go home and rethink my life around that one. Just like to ask the panel now to take their seats. I'm about to hand over to my colleague Johnny Moan, who's Head of Business and Innovation. I think we'll probably give the panel a chance to introduce themselves. We've got some questions that were fed to us from people who weren't able to attend the event physically. So Johnny will be kicking off with those. But this is the opportunity for you. Again, we don't normally get opportunities like this to ask some questions of the panel. Not just Mark, but everybody on the panel. Okay? So Johnny, over to you.
Thank you, Alan. Afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to see you all here. As Alan said, I'm Johnny Moan, Head of Business Innovation. And Mark, I was really struck by the not just each of the points, but the arc of how you were describing some of the techniques. And I was thinking immediately about our three most recent high-value spin-out companies that we've launched. And in each case, the academics, so Theofilos came a few years ago and said, I've got this great new type of ultrasound technology that will be able to improve dental care. Brian Quinn came and said, I've got this great diagnostic tool to help improve fish health. Des Gibson came and said, I've got this new type of sensor that will be able to sense gases much more carefully. They all began with features, and none of them were thinking about the techniques that you were talking about. And they had to cross a bit of a chasm from being the sort of science engineer into thinking exactly as you described at the end, thinking about who their customers were, what they actually needed, how they actually needed it. And that's a tough journey, watching these guys grow, and they're all growing, which is really exciting, but not without strenuous thinking, the kind of thinking that was in behind what you were sharing, so thank you for that. Before we go into the questions and answers, I'll ask each of the panel members to introduce themselves so that you can hear the tone of their voice and tune into them. Milan, I'll start with you.
Right, pretty much everyone would know who I am, I think, but Milan Radosavljevic, I'm Pro Vice Chancellor Research, Innovation and Engagement at UWS, so that will do.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Andy Campbell. I am Commercial Director at an organisation called Elevator. We are one of Scotland's largest private entrepreneurial and enterprise support organisations.
Thank you. My name is Theofilos Tzanidis. I'm a Senior Lecturer in Digital Marketing, and once I've created an MS in Digital Marketing here, which is very relevant to what you were talking today. Thanks.
I think Mark's already been introduced. So
I wasn't going to bore him with it.
So let's go to the first question, and it really I'd ask each of you to give your perspective on how you think Scotland is doing in terms of its enterprise ecosystem and development in relation to maybe other parts of the world. So Milan, can we start with you? How do you think Scotland's doing?
Okay, I'll start on a positive, very positive note. As long as Scotland has got people like Mark, it's got a really bright future in my view. Because Mark, you managed to do two things with me completely. The first time around when I read your report, I was blown away completely and immediately went away and wrote our own paper to kind of how we're going to approach that. And this is now the second time. And I would just kind of say it's really applicable to the diffusion of innovation within organizations. And I think that a lot of people who are trying to achieve innovation within organizations do not understand the network and anti-network effect that you were talking about, and I think it's very relevant to that. But in general, I would kind of think we have a lot of work ahead of us, a lot of work. So I'll just keep it at that because I know that other colleagues and other people will say more.
Yep, thanks. I think overall it's a very encouraging sign in Scotland from our perspective at Elevator. We are seeing quite a large increased engagement in people with concepts and ideas to set up their own business. So we're seeing a lot of companies getting to the starting line of the journey of entrepreneurship. And we're also seeing the support organisations reaching out into the communities an awful lot more. And I think that activity, that proactive activities is starting to yield results. But I think it's the journey onwards. Once we get more companies to the starting line, that's really where the hard work begins. How do you take an idea and turn that into a real commercial opportunity? It may be relatively easy to identify a need in the marketplace, but is there an actual want in the marketplace? And you've just had the sheer definition of a masterclass from Logan telling you exactly how to do that. So I think we've got bags of potential. We're seeing great results coming through. And the Scottish Technology Ecosystem Review that Mark was ahead of and authored, as well as NSET, also lays out very encouraging future for people looking to start up, grow or scale their own businesses.
Well, very impressive delivery, and I'm glad that I'm with another marketer in the panel. One of the things that I believe Scotland is great about is about creating new knowledge and being having a lot of innovators. But I believe one of the problem is a lot of silos. Everything is just in silos, compartmentalized. There is not that networking effect that you're talking about. People don't know what happened, in the other department or in another company, and that creates an issue. And I believe that was solved in the previous era that you described with social media and the ability to talk to each other. And I believe that these are the plus and minuses, and also the fact that there's a lot of companies here that don't realize the potential. And as you say, just making these steps, starting from startup, then becoming an SME, being a family business, because we work a lot in KTPs and started from digital marketing to digital transformation, and now we're looking at other kinds of mediums, more futuristic. There is a lot of potential, but sometimes the business itself doesn't know that they can do this. They have the resources available, or the ROI they can have by having one person that can manage their communications. And I believe that's one of the issues, is like breaking the silos that creates, but networking is one good example of what you did.
I've got this thing here.
Oh, okay.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think around the panel and other speakers today, I think demonstrate half of the answer, which is there's a lot of expertise and a lot of energy and a lot of self-sacrifice from people going into building our ecosystem infrastructure. So places to start a company, training for those people. There's great examples at the university level, the work that Elevator's doing, and elsewhere. So that that life is messy, and as we all know, it's not as nice a jigsaw as we want it to be. But Scotland is reawakening to its entrepreneurial past. But I think the other and the more important half of the answer is what the young people and not so young people here choose to believe, because at some point we became denormalised to entrepreneurship. It's like, that's too scary, it's not for us. We join other people's big companies, and all the things we might say in this panel about things we should do structurally, none of it matters unless you think this is something you should explore. And I would just urge you to give that serious consideration and try to go into entrepreneurship. Don't necessarily become the CEO if you're not so sure of that, but join a startup and see how it goes. Don't be afraid to do it, because if it doesn't work out, it's not like you just leapt out of an aircraft with a parachute. You can get back in the aircraft and try something else. But I remember the most important moments in my life were whenever I had this entrepreneurial opportunity in front of me, and I was pretty scared about taking it, but I just took it. I just tried it, and it worked out. It worked out. And I think if I look back, there's been really good times and really bad times, but what they all did was make my heart beat faster. And I think what you're looking for in life, you're alive and your heart's beating a bit faster. And therefore, when you make your choices, think about that. And it's what I'm doing now. Is it boring me, or is my heart beating faster because I'm exhilarated and afraid and uncertain? And entrepreneurship is a channel you can go to live and make your heart beat faster. So I think if you believe that, or are willing to explore that, then a lot of infrastructure will follow behind you, and you'll have an easier time than what we are trying to do.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to take a couple of pre-submitted questions, and then I'll go to the floor and see if there's any questions that you have for the panel. But one of the other questions that was here was, and not surprisingly given the context, what is the role of universities when it comes to the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Scotland?
Right, okay, easy job. Right, okay, we are co-creators of the ecosystem. We're complex organizations. UWS, for example, is a multi-campus organization. We have a large geographical footprint. We have a campus in London, 4 campuses in Scotland. We are co-creators of that ecosystem. That's number one. Number two is, speaking of the entrepreneurial mindset, that is where, and referring back to your report, Mark, is where the widening of the funnel needs to happen. I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to happen, as the report says, early on in education, but actually at the university, this is where you will get the startups being generated, and we need to kind of widen the funnel. And that is our, considering that this is the economic contribution that we are making, and socio-economic contribution that we are making, not just economic, right? Startups bring not just money to the system, they bring jobs, they bring satisfaction, heartbeat, and all this kind of stuff. And it's our civic responsibility.
Andy?
Okay, I think it's echoing the words of Milan and what Mark has touched on in his earlier presentation. Universities have got a critical role. Any educational establishment has a critical role, right from early years. How do we inspire our young people to think about taking an entrepreneurial path in life and to show them that it's okay to do that? And then how do we educate them to ensure that if they've got that capability, if they've got that notion, that they've got the tools at their disposal to put it into action. So I think across the board, all educational establishments have got a really critical role to play in making sure that that activity is not done in isolation. Scotland's too small a country for universities or organisations not to be working in collaborative partnership with each other. So I think that's also another layer that I would add on, is to say always explore the opportunity for collaboration going forward.
Well, I think universities are places where ideas, come out, and students. And I remember myself when I was a student, I had many ideas. It was a start at the time. I was, undergraduate, postgraduate, and if I reflect back then, there are so many good ideas. And if I had the opportunity to talk to someone like Dr. Mari, for example, with a incubator, to actually take that idea and help me actually monetize it, because that's what we're talking about right now. Enterprise used to be something really, really hard, but right now we have it in our pocket as a mobile phone, and we have a network, and that network could provide social capital, let's say. So having that expertise inside the university, I believe it's really important, because that's where ideas become reality. That's where ideas become knowledge as well, because you have to test it, you have to be critical, you have to try it, and of course that's where the programs are providing an approach. And I believe that's another responsibility here, because with my hat as a program leader for MSc Digital Marketing, one of the things that I try to do is to try and put some practice in the program, to make it relevant for the students, for students to go out with actual skills they could actually demonstrate in an interview, or be able to apply in practice in designing a business. And we had many successful examples. So that's what I think the central bit is the community of people, because enterprise concentrates around communities. There always have to be a community there, and the ideas, because you need the ideas, and of course that's the place where everything happens.
So, yes. I think that universities are in a position of enormous privilege and power, and because you touch the lives of so many young people, and again, not so young people that come into your institution. And I think if you're going to this university, I think you're very lucky, actually, because and the reason I wanted to be here as part of this session today is because this university has no complacency about that responsibility at all. And when you hear the passion and energy with which the various of the people who are from this university talk today, they really believe what they're saying. And that's actually often not the case, And some of the larger, fancier institutions out there, there's a lot of complacency, a lot of going through the motion. But these people actually care about this topic, and you're very lucky to be in an environment where they actually care about allowing you to see who in the world you might turn out to be, and opening this option to you of maybe entrepreneurship or innovation. And it's not about just starting companies, as we said earlier, it's about how do I solve problems in the world, be it in a big company, small company, my own company. How do I have that mindset that I can actually affect change in a world that needs me to do that? So I think that you recognise that responsibility and you're actually living it, and I think that's a really, I would very much, as a student, like to have experienced that when I was a student. So, well done.
Thank you, Mark. Right, let's go out to the floor. Does anybody have any questions for any of the panel members? Just put your hand up if you do, and I'll get you a microphone. There's the first hand out up, so I'll rove over.
How you doing? My name is Darren Gillen. I'm from the Scottish Council of Voluntary Organisations, or SCVO, as most people would know. My question to all the panel members, and it's hopefully if you might be able to do a bit of my job for me. Currently, right now, there was an article, not sure if it was accurate or not, where Mark had commented on his frustration at Scottish Government about the level of acceleration in terms of innovation, in terms of the role he's been appointed to. And part of that, the tech scalers, and part of what you're all talking about, people having an entrepreneurial mindset. There is a part where there's an onboarding process. There are people, young people, people from Ferguson Park, from walking down the high street in Paisley, who have got an entrepreneurial mindset, but they do not have access. They do not have a means to take that innovative thought and develop it in some implementation process. Currently, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the Connecting Scotland scheme. And through the current parliamentary period, they have stated as part of their pledge that they are going to support up to 300,000 people to be connected. There has to be a business case for that, and the Finance Minister has just cut every budget from every department from Scottish Government. What would you say is the business case to make sure that that 300,000 people, they get that the Connecting Scotland project would get funded, so that 300 people would become entrepreneurs? Not all of them, obviously, but it gives them, those people who have got that idea, an opportunity.
Thank you. I think that's probably going to start with Mark. Obviously a question about widening access to entrepreneurial capability.
And I think that we probably wouldn't tolerate in Scotland the idea that some families didn't have electricity. You know, we would put in place the mechanisms to ensure that we did. And nowadays internet access is far more than about entrepreneurship. It's about being able to live amongst your fellow citizens with the dignity and the access to the same tools that they have access to. So I think it's more than an entrepreneurial question. I think we have to think about the provision of internet access as a basic human right in Scotland, and you have to subordinate other expenditure to that. But that's what I think. I would hope that's not a controversial point. I think that should be obvious to people. But beyond that, in terms of how do we widen entrepreneurial access, I think we have to recognise that in common with almost every other country, there's a level of exclusion in entrepreneurship, and it takes different forms. There's historically a poor gender balance in entrepreneurship. There's a per capita poor ethnicity balance. There's a poor balance in favour of people from the right families and with money and so on. So in other words, if you're a middle class white male, it's easier to succeed in entrepreneurship than if you're not. And I think we should talk about that, because it's not just about internet access. It's about investors not understanding the demographics or the products that founders from those demographics bring forward because they've never experienced them. I mean, for example, try going into an investor meeting and saying, I've got this great menopause app, you'll empty the room. I don't do menopause, I do blockchain. You know, I'll see if there's a woman in the office that might be able to talk to you. You know, so we've got to recognise that we shouldn't just be talking about let's do more of the positives. We should be reckoning with our country's own sexism, racism, and classism. It still exists. And to that regard, I'm actually working on another report, if you're glad to hear, with Anna Stewart. It's called Stewart Review. And it's about underrepresentation in entrepreneurship. And we're hoping to publish that in January, very, very close to. And it's trying to address all of these issues and be quite provocative. You know, it's meant to be a constructive provocation to our own sense of complacency. But I would just summarise it just now by saying that what we need to not do is say things like, how do we fix women to be more entrepreneurial? Or how do we fix immigrant ethnic minorities to be more entrepreneurial? You know what? You're not broken. You know, we've got to stop that mindset. Oh, the trouble is women aren't as risk-taking as men. You hear all this utter nonsense that's taught, and instead we can replace that with, how do we take an anti-sexist, anti-racist, anti-classist mindset in our policy making so that we create a level playing field for people? That's what we think we have to do. And I think somewhere in that is the seeds of addressing your underlying question.
Andy?
Yeah. Just add to that, Dan, good to see you again. You're well. Brilliant question, and I can refer to a project Elevator ran called E3. We ran this up in Aberdeen, Shire, Dundee, across Tayside, North and South Lanarkshire. It was community renewal funding that we ran. And I'll follow up with you afterwards because I'll send you through a lot of potential ammunition for supporting what you're looking to do. But I talked about the starting line a little bit earlier on, and let's just say the starting line for this argument is business gateway. So doors are open. If you've got a business that you're looking to set up, business gateway is your gateway into support. E3 was a very much a different service. We were proactive out into the communities, particularly in socially deprived communities. And you're absolutely right, there's lots of entrepreneurial people out there that just don't have the opportunity or the chance or someone to talk to. Now, 10,000 new startups each year is the figure that Business Gateway works to. So bear that figure in mind. What we uncovered with E3 was that 82% of the people that we engaged with never even got to the front line, wouldn't have engaged with Business Gateway. So that's a huge untapped potential, an entrepreneurial potential that should be making its way into the pipeline. Now that's just one figure. We could give you the figures on BAME, we could give you the figures on younger age starts, female founders, etc. But there is a massive potential of people and individuals out there that we need to proactively go out and get. So I can send you some of that, but there are initiatives underway that can help support with that.
Anyone else?
Can I add?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Great. I'll look forward for the report, and please let it be provocative. The first one was, and it's great to see that, because that's what we need. Look, we are a university, 20-something thousand students. If I go slightly deeper into the statistics, you'll see that when you look at the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, UWS recruits about, 20 to 25%. From SIND 20 and SIND 40, I think the percentage is even higher. Which means that by default, we give opportunities. And as our civic responsibility also is, as I said earlier, to kind of, get these people exposed to the entrepreneurship, get to the development of the entrepreneurial mindset, it means that that's another kind of thing that we can do. Now coming back to the case, my responsibility spans across research, innovation, and engagement. And almost any area I look at, that includes, for example, things like knowledge transfer partnerships, continuous professional development, the variety of different other types of innovations that we do. There is almost like a consistent ratio that comes back in terms of every pound that you invest in all of these areas, what you get as a return is almost always more than 7. Sometimes it goes to 8, 9. If that is not the business case, then I don't know what it is. So everything that we will invest in the student startups will generate in the future a massive return for the economy. And in addition to that, employment and all the rest, and satisfaction and so on. So that's what I'm kind of saying. We have a civic responsibility, and we will do it. And by the way, what we're doing at UWS, okay, let me be absolutely clear. Whether there is funding or not, and my team knows about this, whether there is funding or not, whether we get support or not, we are going to do it, okay? We are going to do it. Because we're absolutely adamant that that is what the society needs.
Just want to say, put a little bit of context in the environment, because you're right. The first thing I said, as soon as I heard the question was, we are at the university, and this is also a big question about education. As you talk about free goods, the internet should be a free good. Education, you should have access to education, because that gives you that opportunities. And as you said correctly, we're doing this. But look at the environment. We are now after a pandemic, which judging from the graph that you saw, the team was also showing all the investment that went to technology. And that's why Teams became so successful, is because pandemic actually changed the face of business, and some of the businesses struggled to adapt and then return back to normal, as we say, normal in brackets. And then the new normal had a few surprises. We had the energy crisis, we had all these other things, and the phenomenon that we will see after this depression that's unfolding is that some companies are going to close down naturally, because they're going to have, that negative effect. So the growth that everybody was talking about on a political level, in terms of microeconomics, is starting new opportunities, building new ideas, working with new technologies, working with ideas that are innovative. And that's the things that, entrepreneurship do. And that's, I believe, together, if entrepreneurship is in a university environment, that's where, and especially in an area that, there is issues with access and all the rest that you already mentioned, that is the place, to do this. And I believe, I'm glad I'm in this place as well. So just to top it up, yeah.
Thanks, Neil. Any other questions? Let's go in here.
Thank you. My name is Toby. So my first question is directed to Mark. I have two questions. The first one is, for a sole ownership business, what advice or what would you say to someone who is just starting up, and then there is times where you have your low mood, and then when you feel if you're not doing, are you really doing this right? When you get confused, should I stop? Should I continue? What are the things you would say to such a person? Also, what are the go-to places? Of course, I have Dr. Harlan that I speak to, and my lecturer, Theo, that are always there to listen to me. But I would like to add, because if it's a partnership business, I believe when one person is low, the other person could be in a high mood and push. But a situation when you're just the one, what would you advise? Thank you.
That's a very good question. Undoubtedly, you're going to have lows and highs, and probably more lows than highs at times. Like in Skyscanner, on the outside, it all looked very smooth. Graphs going up to the right, but actually, most days we were pretty terrified. Actually, like the bigger it got, the more afraid we were going to screw it up. And the bigger the pressures got, and the more people we had, the more problems there were. So I know that feeling well and it is a lonely feeling at times, even when you're out with other people. It is quite lonely. So I think there's the obvious answers, like associate with other entrepreneurs, join their networks, to share your experiences. There's a lot of great stuff on YouTube about techniques I've been talking about, all those things you can do. But I think at a personal level, you've got to have some heuristics that help you personally get through those difficult times. And for me, and everyone's got their own personal ones, but I'd urge you to try and develop them, just things you remember in the bad times. for me, the first thing is that good times end, but bad times end too. And otherwise there'll be no good times. So whenever things are bad, if you just keep going, you will get through. I think the second thing is, as much as possible, not to catastrophize, and instead replace that with working the problem. So I'll give you an example. Like in 2014, end of 2013, Skyscanner had doubled its revenue, doubled its number of users to 40 million users from 20 in 1 year, and we all felt pretty good about that. That's a mistake. And then just a few months later, the big shift to mobile started to happen. We weren't very good at mobile, so our user numbers started to decline. Investors took fright, started asking us what we were going to do about that. Ryanair decided to switch off our feed to their traffic, to their flights, to poke us in the eye, as they sometimes did, which was a big problem if you're trying to run a product like ours. We also realised we built some features that earned money but weren't good for users, and we decided we had to switch them off, and that hit our revenue even more. And while all that was going on, we'd grown to a certain size where our old ways of working didn't work anymore, and we suddenly couldn't release software anymore, and people were starting to get angry with each other. Those guys in floor 2 are all idiots type stuff. And everything was going wrong. And I was personally under a lot of pressure from investors, board members, the people in the company wondering, what are you going to do about this, And I always remember that there was this kind of feeling like, it's like there's a movie called Fearless, and it's about a plane crash. It really happened. It's been slightly fictionalised, but there's a moment where the plane is heading down, and the pilots are trying to wrestle with it to keep it going. And the main character, he's really afraid of flying, and suddenly he looks out the window and has a moment of complete calm and says, "This is the moment of my death, and I'm not afraid." And I wasn't in danger of death, but I was thinking, this is the moment of my failure, and I'm not afraid. And it just helped me. Instead of thinking about that, I'm just going to work the issues. I've got these 10 things to fix. I'm going to work this one, then I'm going to work that one, then I'm going to work that one. And doing that, I was able to walk through that valley and get back into the good times again, and things got better, So I think just whenever you get into times of self-doubt, or just 3 decisions have gone against you, just keep going. Just keep doing what you're doing, because it will get better. Just hold yourself together. And if one day you don't hold yourself together and it's all just too much, well, the great thing about the sun is it rises every morning. So you reset. You don't dwell on yesterday's mistake where you were a bit unhappy or angry at someone. You just start the clock again, and you do the best you can. And you string enough of those good days together, you'll get back to more positive. You make a lot of progress. When going through hell, keep going, they say.
Toby, that was a great question. Just as the inclusion one was as well, entrepreneur well-being is a huge issue. I've often seen entrepreneurial ventures can be so absorbing, so all-consuming, that entrepreneurs forget to look after themselves. And that's a key element to success as well. Hey, I'm not the panel, I'm supposed to be asking. Any thoughts from? Great. Well, Toby's got a follow-up question, so let me give you.
Okay, so my second question is, I'm an international student from Nigeria, and I understand that because of the student visa I'm on, it's illegal for me to start my business yet, because I got in contact with Business Gateway, and they've really helped a lot. I got their contact through Dr. Allen, but I had to stop presently because I found out that as an international student, I cannot be self-employed. So one of the things I'm going to ask is, what support is UWS going to give in that situation? Also, do I have to wait till I finish my studies? Is there any support I could get from the school after my studies as an alumnus of the university for my business? Thank you.
I think I'm going to give back the first answer to Milan on this one.
okay, I'll say yes, and then I'll ask colleagues to kind of develop the answer. So fundamentally, look, like with any problem, I'm kind of, you know, there are always challenges, okay? And we are facing challenges left, right, and centre, whether that is with the student visa, whether that is with a cap of the student recruitment and all the rest, you know. These are challenges. The best solutions come from looking at these challenges two ways. And that is, one thing is, how can we work together to overcome the challenge? So there are certain things that you can do, and there are certain things that we can do, and jointly we'll find a solution. But there's always a solution. It might not be ideal, it might not be perfect in a particular time, but coming back to what Mark said, I did my PhD in this country when my home country was considered overseas, so I had to pay international fees. I couldn't get the fees, and I had to defer my entry for a year. But I told them, I'll be back. I'm not giving up, okay? Yeah, this is a current, you know, setback, but I'll find a way to kind of study here. And now I live and work here. I mean, that's weird, but you know what I'm trying to say. So there's always a way, but there is a bit of a kind of give and take, and we'll find a solution. We'll absolutely find a solution. We have wonderful people here within the team who will help you.
Any other comments or thoughts?
Yeah, I know some universities are able to award or community visa sponsoring, you know, centres. I don't know a lot about how you achieve that, but I think it would be great if at some point, as part of your entrepreneur program, you were able to be in that position, because you allow students to do that.
So we are, but it's kind of, you know, because I'm kind of, that's me PVC kind of talking, you know. I need to give the diplomatic answer because I don't understand really the details of your circumstance, but depending on the details of the circumstance, there are always solutions, and there are always kind of, you know, there's a sponsorship, there are sponsorship opportunities, and so on and so on. So it really depends on the situation, but yeah.
Great. I see a hand up back there.
Thank you very much. I want to first of all thank the organizer of this program. Before I go into my question, I think there are two things I picked which is relevant to where I want to dwell. Number one thing, you talk about mindset for whoever want to go into, who want to be an entrepreneur. And secondly, you made mention of technique, now which I believe is relevant to where I want to. But let me give you my background first so that you can understand it better. I'm a student of UWS, a project management student. I came in from Nigeria as well, just like the last person that just asked a question now. And back in Nigeria, I had the mind. I happen to be an entrepreneur. I've written about 2 papers, even published in Nigeria and in US. Now, the first thing I did as an entrepreneur is to look at the environment in Nigeria. I discovered that many people, what they love to do is to go into what we call land-based aquaculture. I'm an aquaculturist. I read aquaculture in first degree, and I specialize on cage culture in my second degree. And I look at the environment in Nigeria. I discovered that a lot of people love to culture fish on land, which is what we call land-based aquaculture. And I now went into developing what we call a plastic enclosure system, which was first of its kind in Nigeria there. And from there, I tried as much as possible to train students up to tertiary institution, maybe lower level tertiary institution. I have a nursery there in Nigeria. So coming to this place, I look at it that the mindset is still there, that I want to become an entrepreneur here. But I look at the environment. There are 2 things I studied here. The environment. The water body we have there is quite different from the water body here. The second thing is that the technique, which I believe I need to learn. Now, where am I going? My question now is that I look at it that I need the technique, just like you said. The mindset is there already to be an entrepreneur. But the technique, now to now get the technique, I try as much as possible to write letter to Scottish salmon company. I wrote a letter to them, and all my paper here in UWS, I think the paper I wrote concerning sustainability, we did something on risk management and sustainability. Everything that I wrote, I majored them on aquaculture. I studied Scottish salmon company, and I wrote a paper about them, which I was given a very good mark. Now, I was happy one day when I saw the director of Scottish aquaculture, Scottish salmon, and I picked his email. I wrote a letter to them that I would love to come and work with them, not work per se. I don't mind even just do something like IT with them. I think I was starting to have about 4-month holiday, but they didn't reply me. And not only that, I saw so many aquaculture companies here in Scotland, which I wrote a letter to them that I want to do something with them, and they didn't reply. Now, my question is this. You have taught us to have the mindset. Many of us have that mindset. But the technique, we discovered that we find it difficult to get people who will assist us, most especially we that were in agriculture, who will assist us to get the knowledge or technique that we need to actually try as an entrepreneur in this place. Then, how can you help us as an international student? Just like she said, some of us have the mind, but to actually grow in this environment, we find it difficult. That's number one. How can you help us as an institution to assist us, to have the knowledge? I don't even mind if they don't even pay me. I told them that I don't need the money, but I need the knowledge first, so that I can now go into what I have meant of. That's number one question. Number two.
Can the second one be brief, please? Because we're running down the clock.
The second question, just like my sister just said, I discovered that most people here, they go into health section to get tier 2. They go into maybe health, you understand what I'm saying? Maybe to go to a health support system and all those things. But we that were in agriculture, I find it difficult to see company that give tier 2 visa or sponsorship visa for students in agriculture. How can you help us, we that were in agri section, to get company that can assist us so that you can get a tier 2, so that you can actually practice what you have in mind to become an entrepreneur here. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. So maybe if I can try and summarize, the first question is really about learning how to become an entrepreneur, to take advantage of your entrepreneurial mindset, and the other one's about a visa, a similar question to Toby's. So let's start with entrepreneurial training. Andy, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, no problem at all. Thanks for the question and the background for the setting. I guess ultimately, I mean, through Elevator we see lots of entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial teams coming in, and there's a whole array of different attributes that they will have, but they'll all face challenges, particularly getting into their market. And I think this is one of the great struggles that anyone going through an entrepreneurial path will face. And it comes down to resilience, it comes down to grit, it comes down to tenacity, it comes down to building your network. There's no one silver bullet that you can take, or one approach, or one technique that will yield you the results that you require. It's a whole mix of different things. So if you're out there, if you're writing emails, if you're going to networking events, if you're learning, if you're connecting, but also really importantly, listen to what the market's saying back to you. That's perhaps one of the most important lessons that you can have. Not outselling all the time, but trying to understand, trying to really define what those organisations or what those individuals' missions might be and where they're struggling. Because if you can find solutions, if you can find things or methodologies that help them move forward, then you'll find yourself suddenly at a different level of relationship. So keep doing what you're doing, keep being tenacious, keep being active as possible, never give up, but ask more questions than perhaps sell. Anyone else to tell? Yeah. Well.
just want to say that a good example came to mind when I started working here and I just was fresh from the market. I was digital marketing in the past life, and I remember somebody asking me that they were organizing a conference on algae, green algae, and they wanted to recruit people and let them know from around UK, that this is happening in Oban and they need to go there. And I just started developing a campaign as naturally as I could, and I started realizing that there's not a lot of people that are interested about algae in UK. As I started, doing some pilot campaigns, etc. So there lies the thing is you need to understand who you're talking to, how many people are there, and where are these people, because they won't be in one place, they will be in different places. And more recently, in the past we used to say go to events, talk to people, pick up the phone, but right now it's all about finding where they reside, which networks they're in, what are they talking about, what are the matters that are interest them, and they're trying to capture them in interject these conversations. And I found myself back then, learning about these digital tools is also another way to actually open that, because it has a great return on investment, because with learning simple rules in using and communicating with these tools outside the email area, you're able to open up to new audiences. And then all of a sudden you will have people interested in what you have to say, and because they understand what is your area and what you're trying to do. I don't know, that's what would you like to say?
Yeah, I think those are really excellent answers. I think nowadays, what never really works is a well-crafted letter sent to a busy person. People are just inundated with noise now in their lives, and what you're trying to establish, I think, is relationships. And it doesn't necessarily need to be the right person at the start. It needs to be people who know people who know people. So, for example, because I've had similar problems, like I'm trying to do something or get into some area, and no one's interested in my email, I'm going to reply because they're human, they're busy and other things to do. You've got to think of it as a multi-channel marketing issue. So what are all the ways nowadays on this earth we can reach somebody? We can write to them by email, it's probably going into spam. We can, not always, but sometimes, so we don't give up, we don't get a reply. We can use LinkedIn. How do we use LinkedIn? We can contact them directly. We can contact someone they're linked into. Or we can, on LinkedIn, we can write articles about agriculture. Just like take your paper that was maybe 100 pages long, turn it into 10 articles, publish one a week, and then the next time you mail that same person, you say, here's 10 articles I've written, I know about this stuff, it'd be good to talk. You find, all you need is one relationship in that organisation that you can develop, that you can then use as a doorway to the next relationship. And it takes a long time, and it's pretty frustrating. It's back to Toby's point about the good days and the bad days. These days feel bad, you feel ignored, etc. But these options you create, these little paths through the network eventually play off for you. So you have to sometimes take the long way around. But it's worth it. So I would think about it as a multi-channel marketing job, indirectly reaching the people I need to via other people if necessary. You can publish in this internet age for free, publish on LinkedIn, publish on Medium, publish on Twitter, cross-reference those things. Create the idea that you're an expert in aquaculture and somebody's eventually going to notice that and the options will come from it. That's how I think about it.
I'm seeing the clock has run down. On your second question, come and talk to me. I'll talk to you about the visa thing, okay? We'll take that offline. So thanks very much for your question. Sorry I couldn't get around more. I know there were quite a few more hands up, but there'll be an opportunity after the session for us to talk and to ask some questions on a one-to-one basis. Thanks very much to the panel as well. Are we going to present something to them now?
Yeah, I've got a little gift for Mark as well, just to say thank you.
That's very kind of you, thanks.
I'm going to ask Alan to come up just to wrap us up.
I haven't spoken enough. Okay, we'd like to invite you to join us upstairs in the atrium space. So just out these doors, up the stairs, There's light refreshments there, and I'm sure the conversations will continue. Again, just like to say thanks to everybody for coming along today, and thanks to the panel for their contributions. And I couldn't not say thanks a lot to my colleagues Lee, Emma and Yemi for organising this, because it doesn't happen at home.